No worries. Thanks, guys. Great to be here. We've got a very fascinating topic to cover this afternoon. We've got a great panel of experts to help us crack through this topic. So the topic itself is all about live production. And just before we pass over to some brief introductions, let's talk about what that means. So we're not just talking about the production or esports broadcast itself, but everything that connects to make the broadcast work, even at some of the biggest live events. So we're going to cover a range of topics today, bringing everything together to execute creative elements, all the technical challenges, and some of the project coordination tasks under pressure. But before we get into those topics, let's say hello to some of our fellow panelists, and we'll start with just a brief introduction, if we can, guys. So first of all, I can see here that we've got Neo in here, the co-founder and CEO of the gym. Maybe Neo, you can introduce yourself a little bit. Maybe also muted.
Hello.
Here we go.
All right, I'm here, I think.
Oh.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Neo.
Okay, so my name is Neo from the Gym Esports Center, and I've been 20 years old, in the event industry. Did some esports tournament in China, and recently I started the gym about a year ago. So we've been around for about a year and a half. We just finished MPL Season 1 Singapore together with Singtel PVP.
Thanks very much, Neo. Also, we've got Shang here from Pong Studio. Great to have you here. Do you want to give us a brief introduction?
Hi everyone. So I used to be a gamer myself, so I compete a lot. So after that, switched into events organizing and tournament online tournament organizing also. So for now, Pong is still a new company, but hope to see you guys more in the future.
Great, thanks, Shang. And last but not least, we have Wayne, the co-founder and operations director of Zenway Productions. Tell us and the audience at home a little bit about yourself, Wayne.
Yep. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Wayne. As Nick introduced, I'm the operations director and co-founder for Zenway Productions. So we have been around for about 6 years now, mainly handling a lot of the esports events, broadcasts and all that in Singapore and most of the region. So we have been relatively new, I still say, about 6 years old. So we hope to be able to continue to bring great events to everyone. Yep.
Great, thanks, Wayne. Okay, guys, so we've got a bunch of topics to get into. We're going to take the audience on a little bit of a journey all the way through what it takes from the beginning. Some of the more basic elements and challenges that come together with tournaments online, all the way through to broadcasting that out to the community and a wide audience across the world. And then some of the biggest live event challenges that you might have, and tying it all together. We'll also touch on some themes, a little bit about COVID and the future of events as well. And then lastly, a bit more on how to potentially get into the industry, whether that's either as a young and enthusiastic employee looking to break in for your first job or to grow beyond that, or whether it's a commercial partner that might be interested in starting an esports business or helping to partner or support in the business. But we're going to start all the way from the top. Let's start with building community and online tournaments. This is where it all began, and this is where even I can still jump in and play a tournament on Friday night. We're going to start with Shang to get us that topic kind of started off. What does it take, to run an online tournament? Previously, you were an esports athlete yourself. You've been at the top peak, but even from the casual level, as an organizer, when you're running these tournaments, what are some of the basics that can't be ignored?
Okay, so I feel that running an online one and an offline one is somewhat the same. Okay, so with all the planning, the tournament scheduling, and of course on how many teams that you want to have participation in your event. So I think for now, because of the COVID situation, I think a lot of tournaments are now being run online. So I think for one thing, in terms of building community, I think appealing to the community is very important. Okay, in terms of broadcasting and things like that, because esports is one of the only activities that you can broadcast to the global audience. So which means that your brands, your sponsors will get a better reach to the audience. Then for running an online tournament, okay, so I think esports fans right now for production wise they are more demanding, as in to watch a good quality online event through streaming. Okay, and also I think ultimately we also need to look at grassroots events and also regional tournaments, because that is where you run all these tournaments to slowly build up to the international tournaments that everyone's waiting for. Yeah.
And what do you find? I mean, a lot of people kind of think when you're new to the industry, I can create a web page or get a challenge bracket, and it's really easy to run an online tournament. But then all of a sudden you have 600 teams sign up, and you've got one admin. Have you ever experienced or seen some organizing failures for online tournaments, or what are some of the things that you really must be taking into consideration when you're launching a big online esports tournament?
I think scheduling is very important. So you need to know how many teams that you want to accept, then how long the tournament period will be. So because you only have so much time in one day, right? So let's say you run for a tournament for 8 hours a day or maybe 10 hours a day. So you have to factor in not only the teams playing, also the games, and also for draws or ties that you need to do a tiebreaker and things like that. So all these are very big factors in running a tournament and ending it on time.
I might ask maybe a question of I'll hand it to either Wayne or Neo, whoever wants to take this one. What about some of the challenges with the online tournaments for some of the bigger ones that you're running? Are there some things you can share about overcoming obstacles or some of the other challenges to get across?
Wait, you're muted.
Yep, sorry. Maybe I can go first. We recently actually ended a event with ROG Masters. It was the ROG Masters CSGO tournament, which was covering over 14 countries in the APAC region. So when we organize an event of that scale, one of the bigger concerns would be generally things like your latency across the servers, your language with certain countries who may not have English as their first language. So some of these things come into mind when we need to organize cross-country matches. So we generally look for people who are able to cover more than one language, if possible. So let's say if you have someone playing Japan versus Australia, so supposedly, preferably, the admin can converse or maybe have some written Japanese in general, and of course English being the main one, to be able to organize the matches as and when they occur. So that's one thing. As for latency, we generally research a lot into, especially for CSGO, right, the servers available across the regions to find the best server, the best benchmark point. So when players from different regions play against one another, they generally play at a very similar latency. We try to minimize situations whereby one is having latency which is a lot better than another. It improves the tournament experience. It improves a lot of the competitive kind of elements when you want it to be. So comparing that to a very LAN scenario, that's one of the biggest concerns that may trickle us in an event, I would say. Yeah.
Gotcha. And Neo, I think you wanted to jump in there.
I think to add on that, I think that one is more on the players part, but more on the production side. I think internet is an issue, especially if you do cross countries, where in some of these countries with the infrastructure of internet is not as great as Singapore. So in terms of streaming wise, and even you get players, if they were to dial in with their own video cameras, you get issues with regards to sound or video issues as well. So I think that is something that we encounter before, especially for the cross country sites. And I think the latency and server is one issue which Wayne has already talked about.
Yeah, no doubt. And just speaking about internet connections, when it comes to running online tournaments, that can be the absolute nightmare, right? How many of you guys have dealt with league ops issues where one team's had half the team disconnect because their ISP's gone down, and you've had to force a restart or deal with issues? King Shang, have you ever, as a player or as an organizer, been in one of those situations where everyone's internet's gone down and it's changed the result of a match?
So far for online, not much issue, because we try and keep the games played regional so that everyone joins the server. That is to minimize the latency issues. Offline tournament, I think it's more towards how well we handle it. Okay, because if there's something goes down, instead of trying to troubleshoot the problem, right, we just switch out the hardware. It's faster that way, and then maybe see how far the match has played on. Then maybe we can restart the match or something like that.
Yeah, copy. All right, so we've been talking about online tournaments. Let's start juicing it up a bit. Let's get to the broadcast. And Neo, you've got a wealth of experience in this area, all the way from running some of the top broadcasts, not just here in Singapore, but at some of the largest events around the world. These days, it doesn't take just a professional production company to run an esports broadcast. I can start a broadcast from home myself. The software mixing has made it so easy. But what do you think it takes really to make, the difference between, a basic broadcast and like a high production value esports tournament?
So I think there's two parts to this. So before COVID, in esports, there's already the offline stuff, which is the staging and sets and stuff, and as well as the broadcasting part. So before COVID, this esports has already had these two elements. When COVID happened, we took out the sets and staging part, and we are left with the broadcast part, where everybody will do it all online. And with regards to your question, that anybody can go online and start streaming. And I think COVID accelerate a bit of this part as well. In the past, you wouldn't see small players, doing small tournaments, because a lot of it is reserved with. But because of COVID, we see a lot of different players coming on, doing small tournaments, different communities popping up, doing small tournaments. So in fact, that's a good thing for the industry, because it actually, in terms of knowledge of the broadcasting, it actually gets everybody, like what Cheryl was trying to say, that nobody will actually notice, what happened behind the scene. So with that, people will be noticed of what actually goes behind the scene. Anybody can do a stream, but the difference between a big production, I would say, is sets and staging, sound, light, and stuff, and how you deal with the different inputs of channel, cameras, as well as the graphics as well. One big thing that happened, I wouldn't say that happened, but accelerate this, is using of Unreal Engine or Unity to run graphics, camera trackings. We've seen it in last year League of Legends World Finals as well, where they use camera trackings and stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll jump in there and add in myself. I realise I didn't even introduce myself. I'm the managing director of ESL Asia, and we run some of the biggest tournaments around the world. But just to add in on the broadcast side, I think with COVID, it's definitely been a real game changer for broadcast, and being able to run shows remotely has been fantastic. And you haven't needed to have so many people come into the studio. But one example, what we've noticed that's improved, but still can be challenging, is that the difference between running like a one-man stream is just the amount of physical things you can do at once as an operator. Can you bring in the next graphic, cue the next guest coming onto the show, or commentator if they're in a different location. And in esports broadcast, just like traditional broadcast, you can break down all those roles and have just a person dedicated to graphics, just a person dedicated to bringing in the next replay, to directing or producing the talent. So there's so many different things that you can add in, but the beauty of that is you don't have to. And we've seen production standards grow to such a new level with such limited resources, which is impressive. But speaking of remote broadcast, a big challenge we've had is we have a studio in Malaysia, and there's currently a movement control order going on right now where we haven't even been able to get our staff into the office. But the show must go on. Neo, can you tell us a bit more, or have you had much to do with like a remote broadcast setup?
Sure, I think likewise in Singapore, we under the gym itself, we operate like a studio as well. So in the past, last year when we started, we can only do offline or remote tournament. And as COVID improved, as we allow talents, so last year November we did offsite tournament where the players come on site, and I think the atmosphere was incredible because the players really enjoy. I think there's a difference for the players. I'm not sure, maybe Kim Sing, because I'm not really a player myself, but the players, they themselves enjoy going to the venue to play and see the opponent eye to eye versus not seeing them, and everything is all just on a phone or on the PC. There's a difference to that. We encountered the same issue. So in one of the instances during MPL, where we went into hidden alert in early May, where we have to juggle between the number of crew and talents on site, and then we have to react to that as well. So things do change. So with regards to COVID, and in this situation, we just have to be very much flexible, and you just have to foresee a lot more things that might happen. So when we plan an event or plan a tournament, we probably have to look into more options. And sometimes it just has to happen with a click of a you
have to have a plan B, C, and D ready to go, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of that, Kim Cheng, I'm going to jump to you and ask you, like, for an opinion piece while we're on broadcast. What's your preference? Neo was talking about Unreal Engine, so a virtual studio. We're talking about remote rather than the physical set. Do you, it's a very much a taste thing. Do you have a preference when you're watching a broadcast? Do you like to see a real set, real people in the one place? Or what do you think of virtual studios?
I think virtual studios now is very interesting, especially now with all the graphics, all the custom graphics, 3D animation added in. It makes the whole thing really dynamic and very interesting to watch. It feels like you're at the venue itself. Okay, but of course, minus the part where with all the players at the offline venue, you don't feel the atmosphere that much, especially when you play your opponent face to face. But now I feel that with the quality of online tournaments itself, with the production, the graphics, and things like that, I think things are getting more interesting.
What do you think, Wayne? What's your preference?
I think with COVID, it has really thrown off how we normally do esports events. Of course, first and foremost, you lack the whole fanfare of an actual offline setting where the players are on stage visible with a nice sit-down area. You get the live crowd, the cheers, and all the kind of stuff. I think all of us here are waiting for the moment we actually get back to a situation like that. is probably possible with increased vaccinations and safe measures around the world. We may see an increase or safer hybrid event somewhere around the world, I guess in the next year or so. But for us, I think it's all about adaptability and flexibility. The whole COVID and lockdown and the ever-changing heightened alerts has actually changed how we see events, how we produce, still high quality events. But we changed mainly the way we do things behind the scenes, but not really impacting what the audience see from an online experience. I think that's what we all try to do and keep that kind of a very nice and posh feel when you watch it online. So we had a couple of similar experiences actually. The very first one was at the first lockdown in Singapore, I think in April and May last year. We actually had an event planned working with Garena for Free Fire Europe Solos. So, of course, in a best case scenario, we have done that in our studio with all our equipment hooked up. But because it was locked down and there was a lot of uncertainty in whether we can return to the office and a lot of problems that may occur with all the transmission and all that. So we took the directives of what the government advised and we actually broke down our studio into multiple pieces. We brought that into all of our own homes. So our producers had the main graphics set in their homes. The observers are at home. All the other admins and other roles are all at home. And we rely solely on the internet to function, sending feeds through the internet to the producer, to and fro, setting up things like RTMP servers in our office structure to be able to maintain a consistent feed. So having to do things like that, having to create backup scenarios for, in the case where, if internet goes down, which I think we all experienced it last year, having some of the ISPs with internets being down in certain regions of Singapore. So I think that has taught us a lot in creating new contingencies. I think like Nick and Neil mentioned a lot about backup plans. Being in this industry, we have like so many plans, so many adaptive measures to make sure that we don't fall into a situation where we get caught off guard. And much more recently, we also did the Mobile Legends Southeast Asian Cup. I think it was initially planned to be in a proper studio with players sitting with us and the commentators in the same area, but it was eventually downscaled. The players played from the comfort of their own homes. We went to a studio and used it under safe measures with the talents on rotation. So all the things required to do your ART testing and the safe measures, the distancing measures were all adhered to. I think there's a lot of things that change and it really force us to be more adaptable and predict what needs to be done and still keep everyone safe in the process.
Yeah. So all I'm hearing is that we're all working 3 times harder for the same output to have plan A, B, C, D. I'm going to give my opinion on virtual versus physical sets. I think I'm an old school guy. I used to work in TV and I used to work in the art department that makes the sets. So I'm a real believer in the physical sets where possible, but the real truth is that the virtual environments are just so dynamic. You can have a completely different world in a few touches of a button that you just couldn't achieve in the physical world. So I'd love to see, more hybrid kind of physical sets with live talent in the future post-COVID that really introduce these virtual elements. So I'm a fan of both, but, I can't get away from the old school stuff and the physical things you can touch and see. And Neo, you've been in the industry for a long time in production. I'd be curious your thoughts. I mean, you obviously have you were the first to mention the benefits of Unreal Engine, but you still like the physical stuff.
So like you, I came from a physical sets world, and then Unreal to a lot of people actually are very You only find them probably, even in the past, we don't use it at all. So, and I'm a firm believer of physical sets as well. And I believe when the players walk into a physical sets versus walking into a green screen studio, the feel is going to be different as well. So there's a few things that you cannot replace. For example, the material, the touch and feel, the reflectivity of the materials and stuff like that. Because I used to build studios when I was a couple of years back in China as well. So it's a different workflow, but you can't brush off virtual as well, because virtual, especially in this so-called COVID world, where you need to try to entice your audiences and keep them glued and keep them happy with what they're seeing. So the unreal or the virtual stuff give you lots of imagination, right? You can technically build the whole game world, in Unreal, and then let people navigate within this world, which is not possible in a real set environment. So, and I agree that in the future, it's going to be a hybrid. It's going to be some parts of it's real, and then some parts of it's unreal, where you can have lots more imagination. And I think COVID brought us technology change and technology, adaptation of technology, in a very fast way. That's how I look at it.
I've got one last question on, I agree with a lot of those insights, by the way. One last question on esports broadcast, and we're kind of touching on, the players at the moment, like where are they located, and not coming into a studio or to a live arena makes a big impact. We're seeing a lot more of, esports players' bedrooms, while they're on the live broadcast. Kim Shang, I'm going to go to you. Have you noticed in any of your tournaments or some of the broadcasts you watch, some of the players, don't so much understand the broadcast world or what's important or pretty to see us as a viewer? So, the backdrop can be quite, let's just say, not as tidy. Have you noticed that in any of the broadcasts you've been doing or that you've been watching?
I think a few. So I think that like what Neil and what Wayne said, right, is a bit more of a hybrid thing. So I think what you want, I think let me rephrase it. At the end of the day, is you try to make it in a way whereby what you want to show to your viewers. Yeah. So let's say if you can hide something, maybe you can green screen it, or maybe you have you tilt your camera angle in a way whereby has a nicer view. Yeah. So I feel that, yeah.
We've been, printing some backdrops and putting them in players' houses before interviews and things like that to tidy it up. But it's tough to get people to accept that or adopt it. Here's the question for you: do you think the viewer cares? Does a viewer care if they're watching someone's messy bedroom behind them? Maybe they don't care. That's to anyone.
I think it depends on the scale of the event. I think if it's an international event, I think because you have different types of viewers from globally, I think some of them may care. Yeah.
I think it's more of my opinion is that it's more of a brand perspective as well. And it will show a lot on the how detailed the EO actually look into an event.
Yeah, agreed. All right. So speaking of events, let's talk about live events, which haven't really existed or have been very challenging to execute in recent times. So before we talk about the COVID times, just for the uninitiated or the new viewer who's not familiar what us as organisers have to put together, there's multiple different areas and departments that need to all fit into place. So some of the elements of putting on a big event, you've got the venue scouting, finding a venue location and negotiating the contract, stage design, the audio visual. You have to have the right IT and tech requirements. There's many, many more. So I've listed a few there, but let's start on, some of the Singapore level here. And let's go to you, Wayne. There's plenty more things that are required to put on these events. Maybe you can talk about some of those things.
Yeah. We have been involved in quite a few, I think, over the past few years. One of the very first being the Vainglory World Finals in 2017. There was a McLaren event held at Marquee, Singapore, I think in 2019, as well as the recent Free Fire World Series. So we've seen quite a few since, pre-COVID to the, with the actual COVID measures. So I think the main difference is, of course, all the social distancing as well as the actual audience involvement and engagement. So back end on the production side of things, I think it generally doesn't change very much. Your back end producers, your stage and camera directors, your on-stage referees, and all the technical stuff that works behind, I think they generally don't change. It takes a bit more effort to look into the things that that is more relatable to the actual production itself. So a lot of the roles and the expertise goes into the actual broadcast. So we start from the people who kind of come out with the program, the actual flow, how much time you need per match. Is there breaks? How much time do the commentary gets to speak? All this is, of course, programmed and approved, of course, with the clients that we work with. So some of them tend to be your publishers and developers from around the world. Subsequently, after that, of course, we look into the equipment. Who do we need to bring down to make the whole event a success? So your production directors, your cam directors, your cam switchers, the important ones being, of course, the cameraman on site giving you the best views. For the most of the esports professional games, you have all your observers giving you all your in-game, visibility, the content that people look out for. Other than that, of course, your day-to-day, your people who handle the graphic mix, the overlays, a lot of pre-planning involved in that part as well. Showcasing the relevant information to the people who watch. So it's very a lot of planning, a lot of design work done beforehand. On the actual day, I think you covered a little bit on the stage design, the scouting. So we look a lot into space, how we utilize the space that we may be assigned to, the venue. A lot on internet connection. I think internet for esports is one of the biggest factors here. Laying out proper internet structure to the tournament and maybe the practice areas for the players. Production itself, of course, has to have its own dedicated, internet to upload the best live streams to the world to watch. And I think that's majorly, most of the back end roles that we have. And particularly with FF World Series, with the safe distancing measures involved, we see a lot of things like your safe distancing officers, people who check whether you're in the right zones. Player management has also become an increase in the structure as well. We don't allow players to cross certain zones. They are not allowed to interact with one another outside of the tournament. They're only allowed to enter certain areas. For example, their practice rooms, the desk which they play at, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, the additional space required to maintain, the additional distancing of 1 meters to 1.5 meters across the board. So I think that is generally what live events has evolved to. And I think Singapore is one of the best places to do something like that. We have a lot of great health facilities and measures in place. The internet's great. And I think we hope to see an increase in the quality of these events entering into Singapore. Yep.
Yeah, that's a great one. Speaking of big events, I know, Neil, I'm going to go to you next because you've run a pretty big event in Shanghai in the past. But just to touch on the ESL side, we've run some of the large events in one of our big ones, Intel Extreme Masters, Katowice in Poland, the ESL 1 Cologne, which is a photo of here in the background. for a lot of us guys who've been in like the esports industry for a long time, we think about the sport, we think about what's on the stage and what it looks like. But a really difficult element of pulling together these events that you know, it takes a lot to figure out is actually the ticketing and the marketing. You know, what is the actual and the user experience, or sorry, the fans' experience when they're in the arena, particularly when we run events that last, you know, 2 days, 2 full days. What other entertainment is there beyond just sitting in an arena for 8 hours a day? Like, you know, you have to have some kind of free play experiences, cosplay tournaments, different kinds of entertainment to keep people, you know, engaged, not just with the core tournament, but the whole event experience. And that can take a lot to work out. I mean, the amount of different kinds of ticketing and where they go and what kind of extras they get for the features or the price of the ticket they get. You know, we could spend days and up to many revisions working on that kind of stuff. Yeah, Neo, going back to you, also a co-producer of All Stars in Shanghai. So I'm sure you've got some input on what it takes to run some of these big live events. Still muted though.
So that was actually one of my first experience in esports, and then it's about a couple of way back when I had a chance to work with a production company from US, and it was an eye opener for us. You know, I think the way, I mean, it was really run like an NBA All Star, like what we have seen on TV, where you have halftime show, where you have shows in between, you have people have t-shirt guns, you know, spraying t-shirts to the crowds, and you also have an exhibition area. You know, that event was an eye-opener, and I learned quite a fair bit as well. Although I'm not really very involved in the marketing side of things, but I've seen how, you know, where it was all probably planned out, and how the shows are slotted in between the breaks and stuff, and the people just get very involved, you know. So that is something which is a very good experience, and then hopefully we can do something again.
Gotcha. And, you know, let's just go a little bit around the grounds between us all now. Wayne was talking a lot about some of the COVID measures that are required for events that are happening at the moment. So obviously we can't have, you know, 10,000 fans in an arena right now. So events have defaulted more to like just players and the crew running these. What's your kind of predictions, if you will, to how soon it will take, or what the new format for events will look like when it comes to audience? So I'll start with you again, Neo, and then go around to Kim Shang next.
So I think the next 1 to 2 years, I would say in this region, because I'm not going to talk about the other region. I've seen US opening up, I've seen UK opening up, 20,000 fans packed into the NBA or NBA finals, and then you saw the Euro that just finished happen. I'm not going to. I think those countries are pretty much open up, right? And then pretty much. So for this region, especially where we are more conservative with regards to COVID, and I think Australia, where Nick will come from, very conservative as well. And when there are cases, we go into a lockdown. So I think moving forward in the next 2 years, hybrid is the key word. Hybrid. We talk a lot about hybrid, and it will slowly open up with small numbers of audiences from 100 to 500 to probably 1,000. And of course, there's always an online elements of it that will come into it. So whatever we have learned in the last 1.5 years will carry on with us. I will probably say in the next 2 to 3 years, and it will be very important, right, with regards to how you're going to entice using both real sets and unreal sets, for example. So I think moving forward, that's going to be it's not a question at all in the region, where you will see, because the other region in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand are all struggling with the numbers of the infected. So that's very sad. Because in Singapore, you know, we had a recent surge. It's very unfortunate, but I think we're going to come out moving forward, where hybrid will be the key thing.
All right, thanks very much. And Kim Shang, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you also. So I feel that I think the hybrid will be the to go in the future. So maybe what we'll be seeing in the future, maybe events will be run, qualify maybe done online. Okay, then the finals will be on the physical set. By the time, hopefully, when things are better, and more restrictions are being lifted, maybe you can have thousands of crowd in the finals. Yeah, so that's what I think maybe.
Awesome. And Wayne, a quick one from you.
I think the most important thing ultimately in a situation like this is, of course, the healthcare of the entire globe in general, right? Personally, we follow a lot about what the world is doing in terms of how healthcare is coping with COVID, vaccinations, herd mentality, and this really affects a lot on how events become a better scenario if offline events do come back. Like Leo mentioned, a lot of staggered sizes from 100, 250, 500. It's been seen here in Singapore. Singapore has a decent structure in place where, if you have events of a certain size, COVID testings need to be done. Rapid testings done within a day. Certain structures, we have to do it with PCR testing, which is available and completed with results the next day. So all this helps with the whole structure of how do we then cope with the whole COVID issue. When can we return to a live event with, like you mentioned, thousands of people? There has to be new guidelines and new norms in place. Stadiums can still operate, I believe. There are multiple entrances to stadiums. You look at our local indoor stadium and many around the world, you have like easily 20 gates. We could do testing at every gate, ensuring that that section will only interact with each other in some way or other. If things get bad, we then seat alternate seats, as seen in many movie theaters. So I think there is a lot of new norms being put into place over the past year, and it will continue to be so. And even if we can't create an event that is so-called massive with tens of thousands of people sitting in one place, but it may be very real for us to do it in a way whereby we could be sitting in different stadiums around the world, but we can still compete in a world-class arena. I think that would be something in the near future. Yep.
Right. And that actually touches on, I'm just starting to see some of the questions coming in from our viewers. One of those was, how do we feel about Singapore's capabilities to hold large-scale esports events and leagues? So you've actually touched on that a little bit there already, but I'll circle back to that because, how big can Singapore go here in the future? We'll come back to. So before we get into the Q&A, there's just one last topic I want to quickly cover, which is about, for those watching who want to know, how to get into the industry and what it takes to do so. So I'll quickly rattle off some of the jobs or industry sectors within I Know What We Do. We've talked about league and tournament operations. That can be as basic as, if you have experience in the game, you know the rules, you can help administrate a tournament. We've got broadcast from both the production side, which can be live or post-produced, so video editing, graphics creation. It can be mixing and audio engineering. Project and event management, the bigger events that we run, and we need people to organize. Social media, PR, marketing, business development, sales. There's so many different facets of esports that you can get into. But I want to go around the group and just ask just a quick word of advice before we get into the Q&A for these other topics on what your advice is to get into the industry, get into one of these jobs, either within your company or just in the industry in general. So there's two sides to this. It could be somebody who's just looking to get in as an employee, or it could be as a business. So I think I'm going to leave the business side to you, Neo, because you've got some experience there. But I'm going to ask you again, Wayne, quickly. If you want to get in as an employee or to work in the industry, what's your quick word of advice?
I think first and foremost, it's about being involved, being vocal in the community. I think more often than not, a lot of us, develop this passion for esports. We have been playing games in our youth, and we are, living our passions as reality right now. For myself, I've competed in games, quickly found out that I'm not so good at it, then decided to go on to the side of organizing them and making them ideal for people like me who wanted to play. So a lot of the roles circulate around the fact that you first and foremost enjoy games, right? You have to love the games, love the back end work of it, like you mentioned, all the league ops, the observers, the producers, and all that kind of stuff. So to get into it, of course, a lot of the people whom we work with, freelancers and full-timers alike, they tend to either participate in our events before. They come to us and say that, hey, I got something to offer. I want to try out on certain roles. A lot of the good players turn out to be pretty decent observers. They understand the league ops, what to do to handle the players. That's where a lot of them get started. Then some of them, start to get interested in a lot of the production, the behind the scenes work. And we then look at whether they have the skill set to do so. Otherwise, there's a lot of training on our side as well. We work with quite a few freelancers in our time over the past year or so. And we convert a lot of them to very consistent staff working for us. Some of them have converted full-time, working permanently for us for the past 2 to 3 years. And to really get started, I think, first and foremost, be involved, be vocal to people like us. I think we are always on the lookout for great talent and great people who want to convert their passion into a career. I think that's first and foremost the most important. And keep going at it, keep trying and perform in the role that you want to or you want to explore. It of course helps if you have relevant education, say in events or broadcasting or in the mass comm faculties. So yeah, just be involved, keep talking to us, and we'll be always here to help.
Yeah, great. I think having a hungry attitude and always just taking initiative is really key there. Kim Shang, what would be your advice?
Okay, like what Wayne has touched on, right? So for him to get new part-timers and things to come inside because they are interested, or maybe they already participated in their past tournaments, so they come on board to offer something. So I myself was a competitor also, so I've been to multiple tournaments and events, and I won quite a few. So I've seen well-run events and not so good ones also. So prior to that, while participating in all these tournaments, I kind of learned the behind the scenes on how certain aspects of the event is being run or the tournament is being run. So for me, I'm more on the league ops kind of guy. So I feel that organizing a tournament, the scheduling, everything is very important because you end everything on time, right? You don't want to overrun, then you tire out the players, then it starts to snowball, then players will start complaining. So I feel that in production for a tournament, there's a lot of roles. Okay, so I think at the end of the day is what you're interested in and when you want to come on board and what you want to do it. Because some people I encountered, they actually like to do a lot of video editing, a lot of graphic design, but some they want to come in and to be shoutcasters, or tournament league ops and things like that. So at the end of the day, I think is to find your passion and your interest in the type of role you want to play in the esports industry.
Yeah, great. And then lastly, over to you, Neo, before the Q&A. We're going to have to go pretty quick with the Q&A here, guys.
Yeah.
But if you're a partner or a commercial entity trying to get into esports, what would your advice be?
Okay, so very simple. I'm going to keep it simple. There's an old saying in the industry: you're only as good as your last event. the industry is a difficult one, very similar to events, and you only have one chance. So basically, with that, for those, and I also see that there's also a lot of people like in the event industry coming into esports as well, because there's a lot of similarity, especially on the production side. So I guess resilience is another one if you want to come into the esports, because things change, like what we talked about earlier, where you have a sudden change of policies and then you just have to adapt. But of course, we just want to try, as we progress with the pandemic, we just want to make sure that we return to some normalcy, so there's no sudden change in policy. Things get more stable, so we can actually plan properly. In fact, it is not to our change, because a lot of it has got to do with money and stuff. You might have already invested and lose money, and in the end you can't do certain things. So this is very important. So when you want to come into the industry, you just have to be as resilient as a lot of people in the event, a lot of us here. I mean, I'm not sure if you agree with me. Yeah.
Yeah, great. No, I think we do. So just gearing up for the Q&A here. Sorry, guys. It's going to be the speed round, all right? So we're going to go to Kim Shang first. We had a particular question about gaining in-game technical knowledge to do camera work. So we call that observing. For those uninitiated, most of what we're broadcasting is in-game, and we need talented, normally ex-players, to follow the movement of the game. Kim Shang, what do you think it takes to skill up in that area?
Okay, so like as you mentioned, Nick, right? I think ex players is you need to know the game, okay, before you know how to control the camera work. So let's say Dota, for example. If you know certain fight or certain engagement is going to happen, then you must know how to work the camera around. Okay, say okay to focus on this player and things like that. Or if the runes are coming out, then to know when to go and basically observe the area. So camera work, I think ultimately it boils down to how well you know the game, so that you can predict on the fly action when certain fights or team fights going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical. Otherwise, you miss the action, and your viewers are quite annoyed. They miss that, right? Speaking of broadcast, next one is going to go to Neo. It's going to be quick. How do you think you strike the balance between good viewership experience and a player experience for esports events? Because what's good for the viewer isn't always great for the player, who's, they might be used to playing at home, big desk. They're not as comfortable in a set, for example. So how do you strike the balance as an organizer?
No, I think we spoke about that earlier as well, because hybrid is going to be the norm. So I foresee players will still come to a set to the studio, where they have actual hard set where they sit down, and then they can see their opponent in the future. And then the viewership experience will probably stay the same, where you can have a bit of the real and unreal sets which we talk about.
Yeah, it can be difficult, and I think that all players, first time they get into a studio, they got cameras in their face, or they're on a big stage. It can be nerve-wracking. This one's a little.
Sorry, no, it's okay. So to touch I think you're quite right there, but that's why I feel that even for some of the smaller community event, we need to bring it offline and offsite, and then there is a growth opportunity for the players as well, so that they're ready for the big stage. Because I think this is important too.
Get them more used to it before they get to that big stage level, right?
Yep.
Agreed. So switching gears a little bit, a bit more to the commercial side of esports business. One of the questions here is about the revenue streams for esports events changing in the past few years. So the question is, are traditional big ticket sponsors still receptive to paying for sponsorship or ad time, or are we seeing a shift in their willingness to spend pre and post pandemic? So that can be a tough question to answer. So I'll take any volunteers. Otherwise, I'll grab it.
I can chip in a little bit, I suppose. I think first and foremost, when it comes to sponsorship, even for us, big or small, first and foremost, we look at what does the sponsor want out of it. The biggest question that is always thrown out is always ROI. What do they get in return? When it's COVID and everything's online, you don't get the offline fanfare. Like Nick, you mentioned a lot of the brand presence on ground, a lot of the cosplay kind of stuff, and maybe a lot of those experience zones, which call them, around the venue. There are some brands which transferred that to an online experience, so we integrate them into the broadcast. So say it could be a microsite that they can interact with, or some sort of a sideline game, which we have seen, I think, a lot of the brands do to divert the viewers out of the stream itself. That's kind of, in a way, engagement as well. And more than often than not, we look into production and broadcasts and overlays as a bigger way to answer to brands. Think about things like your brand placements on the caster's desk. If we do have the luxury of players' desk, it could be on cam when they play. If the players are at home, we have done events where we send player kits to them, whether it's face masks, hand sanitizers, or meals, things like that. We could send that to them. They could still sit in front of a camera with a brand placement, or whichever the case is, as long as brands are willing to be involved. I think it's up to organizations like us to be flexible in what we offer to the sponsors. Regarding the amount and whether it changes, I don't think it will always change. There is many opportunities and segments which they can support. That's what we are here to do, to show that events has more space to adapt and more things that we can do, and giving them more avenues to kind of showcase their sponsorship. I think we have seen quite a bit of increase in TV stations wanting to broadcast esports as well. So that increases their audience space, not just to say Twitch or Facebook. So yeah, I think there's still quite a bit of changes that we have yet to see. And I think it will kind of come together. We still see Riot and a lot of the big brands do their big events. We have seen BlizzCon gone completely online. And I don't think it entirely diminishes the kind of brand and the perspective of what they expect out of a show. The only thing is people are missing is the offline experience. I think that's the most important thing. Yeah.
I'll jump in there, and I'm going to have to round up, guys, because we're getting our 2 minutes warning. But I'll help answer this and one of the previous questions that was partially addressed to me. So the question's about revenue streams pre-post pandemic, and one of the earlier questions was about ESL Play, our online platform around the world. So with less live events, of course, we're not able to do those experience zones, those touch and feel examples. But we actually had a record months and a record year for the number of participants who are playing in our online tournaments around the world. Like, we've never seen such high numbers. And similarly with viewership, not just ESL, all of the gaming publishers are seeing, massive uplift in viewership throughout the pandemic, particularly in those first few months of lockdown where people were just really engaging in esports. So in terms of those revenue streams, of course, the live event ones have dropped off, but the appetite from sponsors is still there. First and foremost, they were always mainly looking for ways to engage the esports audience, not just have their logo present in a broadcast. So all it's done is made us as organizers have to think a little bit more about how we find digital ways and through our broadcast ways to engage our fans. So that's essentially what we've done. And I think the appetite, if anything, is as strong as ever. But look, guys, I know we're on the 5 o'clock mark. The next panelists are ready to go. So I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. Kim, Shang, Wayne, Neo, guys, it's been a great conversation. And thank you to the SGGA for hosting and everyone for watching. we'll pass it back to Cheryl.